If you look at a standard map of the United States, Alaska is usually tucked away in a small box in the bottom left corner, right next to Hawaii. It looks like a distant, frozen afterthought, a giant block of ice we bought from the Russians in 1867 because it seemed like a good deal at the time. But that map is a lie. If you want to see the real world, the world where superpowers are currently jockeying for the future of the 21st century, you have to flip the globe on its head and look at the North Pole. When you do that, you realize that Alaska isn't a remote outpost. It is the most strategic piece of real estate on the planet. Right now, as you're watching this, Russian and Chinese strategic bombers are flying joint patrols just 200 miles off the Alaskan coast. This isn't a hypothetical threat. It's the new daily reality of 2026. Without this single piece of land, the United States would not just lose its primary shield against a nuclear strike, the entire global supply chain would effectively snap in half. But there is one specific reason, a secret X factor, that makes Alaska more valuable to Washington, D.C. than New York and California combined. It's something most Americans have never heard of, but it's the only reason the U.S. can still claim to be a superpower in the age of green energy and AI. We'll get to that. But first, we need to talk about the fortress, the resource fortress. For decades, we've thought of Alaska as the gas station, and sure, the numbers are huge. Even now, projects like Willow and Pika are pumping out hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil a day, keeping the lights on across the West Coast. But in 2026, oil is yesterday's news. The real value of Alaska is what's hidden beneath the permafrost. Alaska is home to 49 of the 50 minerals the U.S. government has officially labeled as critical to national security. We're talking about the lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements required for everything from the F-35 stealth fighter to the smartphone in your pocket. Currently, China controls nearly 90% of the global supply chain for these minerals. If they flip the switch and stop exporting tomorrow, the U.S. tech economy would face a total standstill. Alaska is the only domestic fortress that can stop that from happening. The Ambler mining district alone contains billions of pounds of copper and zinc. These aren't just commodities, they are the literal ammunition for the 21st century economy. As the state is sitting on an estimated $1 trillion in untapped mineral wealth. And the wildest part? The people who live there are the only Americans who get a direct cut of this. The Alaska Permanent Fund, essentially a massive sovereign wealth fund, has grown to over $86 billion. Because Alaska is so rich in resources, the state doesn't have a personal income tax or a sales tax. Instead, the government pays you to live there, the Arctic Gateway. But resources are useless if you can't defend them, and that brings us to why the Pentagon is currently pouring billions into the Alaskan tundra. Welcome to Cold War 2.0. During the first Cold War, the Arctic was a dead zone, a frozen barrier that no one could cross. But today, the ice is receding. New shipping lanes, like the Northern Sea Route, are opening up. This route allows a ship to travel from Shanghai to Rotterdam in roughly 60% of the time it takes to go through the Suez Canal. Russia knows this. That's why they've built over 50 military outposts across their Arctic coastline. China knows this too. They've declared themselves a near-Arctic state, despite being thousands of miles away, and are building a polar silk road. Alaska is the only thing standing in their way. If you stand on the shores of Little Diomede Island in Alaska, you can literally see Big Diomede Island in Russia with your own eyes. They are only 2.4 miles apart. This is the front line. In 2026, the Bering Strait has become the new Strait of Hormuz. It is a choke point that controls the flow of the next generation of global trade. If the US didn't own Alaska, Russia and China would have an uncontested monopoly over the top of the world, the logistics hub. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's a frozen military base with some golden oil. How does that affect my life in Ohio or Florida? The answer is at the Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. Most people think of airports as places where people go on vacation. But Anchorage is a different animal. It is currently the 4th busiest cargo airport on the planet. Look at a globe again. Anchorage is almost exactly the same distance from Tokyo, New York, and Frankfurt. Within a 9.5-hour flight from Alaska, you can reach 95% of the industrial world. Every single day, Over 500 wide-body freighters land here. If you've ever ordered something on Amazon or waited for a critical part for your car, there is an 80% chance it passed through Alaska. Because planes can't fly halfway around the world fully loaded with fuel and cargo, they're too heavy. They use Anchorage as a technical stop. They land, refuel, swap crews, and take off again. Anchorage isn't just a city, it's the lung of global commerce. If Alaska were to disappear, the just-in-time delivery system that the American lifestyle depends on would instantly collapse. Your shipping times wouldn't just go from 2 days to 2 weeks, the costs would triple. The defense shield. But there is a darker reason why Alaska is indispensable. It involves a small, unassuming base called Fort Greely. This is the home of the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense (GMD) system. As of 2026, this is the only system in the world capable of intercepting an incoming intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, while it's still in space. Because of the curvature of the Earth, any nuclear missile launched from North Korea, China, or Russia toward the continental United States has to fly over the North Pole. Alaska is the only place where we can catch those missiles at their highest point. The US has 44 interceptors currently in the ground, with 20 more being fast-tracked. These aren't just missiles. They are kinetic kill vehicles that hit an incoming nuke at 15,000 miles per hour. If Alaska isn't part of the Union, the US has zero defense against a rogue nuclear strike. The lower 48 would be completely exposed. The X factor. Now we've talked about the minerals, the trade routes, and the nukes. But remember that X factor I mentioned at the start? The one reason Alaska is more important than almost any other state? It's not just about what Alaska has, it's about what Alaska is becoming. As the climate shifts, the world's center of gravity is moving north. For 200 years, the Atlantic was the center of the world. For the last 50, it was the Pacific. But the 21st century belongs to the Arctic. The X factor is sovereignty over the future. By 2030, the Arctic Ocean is projected to be ice-free during the summer. This will trigger the greatest land and resource grab in human history. Because the US owns Alaska, it has a seat at the table. It has the right to claim hundreds of thousands of square miles of the continental shelf, land that contains an estimated 30% of the world's undiscovered gas and 13% of its oil. But more importantly, Alaska provides the US with something no other country has: strategic depth. Think about it. The US is an island nation. It's bordered by 2 oceans and 2 friendly neighbors. But Alaska gives the US a foothold on the Eurasian continent's doorstep. It allows the US to project power into the backyard of its 2 biggest rivals without ever leaving American soil. If the US didn't have Alaska, it would be a regional power, confined to the middle of North America. With Alaska, the US is a polar superpower. The verdict. So, why is Alaska the most important state? Because it is the only state that solves every single one of America's existential problems. Need a way to break China's monopoly on tech minerals? Alaska. Need a way to stop a nuclear ICBM? Alaska. Need to keep the global shipping lanes open for e-commerce? Alaska. Need to ensure America stays a superpower for the next 100 years? Alaska. It was once called Seward's Folly, a useless block of ice that cost $7.2 million. Today, that looks like the greatest real estate deal in the history of mankind. The next time you see that tiny box in the corner of the map, just remember, that's not an afterthought. That's the fortress keeping the rest of the country alive. But here is where the story takes an even more surreal turn. In 2026, we are witnessing the birth of the Data Arctic. You see, Alaska's freezing temperatures, which were once considered its greatest liability, have suddenly become its most valuable asset for the AI revolution. Large-scale data centers, the brains behind the world's most advanced artificial intelligence, generate an incredible amount of heat. In Virginia or California, companies spend billions of dollars every year just on electricity to keep these servers from melting. But in the Alaskan interior, the environment provides free cooling nearly year-round. We are seeing a massive migration of digital infrastructure to the north. By placing these hubs in Alaska, the US can operate the world's most powerful AI clusters at a fraction of the carbon footprint and cost of its rivals. Furthermore, we have to look at the submarine cable frontier. The shortest path for fiber optic cables connecting London to Tokyo is no longer across the Atlantic and through the crowded Mediterranean. It's through the Northwest Passage, hugging the Alaskan coastline. This gives the United States a digital chokehold. Almost every byte of high-speed data traveling between the world's two largest financial zones now physically passes through Alaskan waters. In a world where data is the new oil, Alaska isn't just a gas station, it's the world's most secure hard drive. If a conflict breaks out, the nation that controls these cables controls the global internet. This isn't just about territory anymore. It's about who owns the neural network of civilization itself. When you realize that Alaska is the physical anchor for both the physical trade of the past and the digital trade of the future, you realize it's not just an American state. It is the central nervous system of the entire Western world. Without this frozen piece of land, the United States wouldn't just be smaller, it would be obsolete. If you found this breakdown of Alaska's strategic importance eye-opening, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping our world. Don't forget to share this video with someone who still thinks Alaska is just a frozen afterthought. Let's spread the word on why the Arctic is the new frontier.